Brian Kelly was speaking to the media yesterday, and obviously Thursdays are the last time that we hear from Kelly, as the next time we see and hear from Kelly, he'll be inside Tiger Stadium getting ready to kick it off versus Auburn. But he had some things that he was talking about yesterday, including updating the status of his quarterback, as Jaden Daniels has been obviously left off of the injury report. This is Tim, Stewie, of Kelly giving an update on his quarterback. But Daniels has, I think a little surprisingly early in the week, left off the injury report after we saw what he sustained over in Columbia in that game versus Missouri. And it was Kelly yesterday was talking about the week that Daniels had and the expectations for him on Saturday. We good on this, Stewie? This is Brian Kelly yesterday.
Yeah, good question. It's one of those things where, as a coach, you want to be you want to be aware of how a quarterback's feeling and how you kind of move into the week. But we have captains meetings, and he's one of our captains on Monday. He said, "Coach, I don't want you to change anything. I'm good to go." And so we didn't change anything up. He took all the reps, and I think it sent a really good message to everybody about, there's going to be some bumps and bruises, and guys are going to be sore, but you got to kind of, get through it. And so I thought that the message that he sent this week, he feels really good now, but I think he was pretty sore on Tuesday and Wednesday, but today he looked really good, back to his old self, and I think he's ready to compete at a high level.
Just if you needed more evidence.
I think he's been competent. I think our kickers.
Just if you needed more evidence on Daniels and how much he means to this team, I think that's another great example of Kelly kind of laying out the conversation that they had in the captain's meeting earlier this week, and what Daniels' expectations were for himself. And when you talk about leadership, you talk about a guy that is an MVP to a team, and I think that Jaden Daniels is the absolute definition of a most valuable player to a team. Whenever you're searching for, well, what does it mean to be a most valuable player? You could always go back to the 2023 LSU football team and point to the example of Jaden Daniels, because if you take him off this team, not only do you lose the production on offense, but you lose stuff like that. Stuff that we may not see, we may not hear about. You have to hear it from inside of coaches or people that are inside the building, of Daniels telling and going to the head coach and saying, "Hey, man, don't change anything up. Make sure I get all my reps. Make sure that this week is just as normal as possible." And while some people might think like that's tough guy stuff, that's leadership in the sense of just how Kelly said, what it meant to the rest of the team. The message that it sends to the rest of the locker room, that this guy's locked in, dialed in, ready to go every day. Doesn't matter what happens, injured, hurting, not healthy, not right, he's in. And if he's in, who can't be in? Daniels is the definition, in my opinion, of what a most valuable player is to a team. Not only does he carry the load like he does on the field, but behind the scenes, he's setting the example every single day with his leadership of fighting through what's going on with him personally and looking out for the betterment of the team. Daniels is, there's no more that we can say to praise LSU senior quarterback. He is in an elite class of signal callers right now. I think he's a finalist for the Heisman Trophy Award right now. If they were to shut down the season and they call the 5 up to New York, he's in the mix.
Is it 5 or 3?
It's as many as they want it to be.
Yeah, it's. I think this year you could probably have 5.
Yeah, all right.
Because there's been years when it's been 3 people, 5 people, 4 people. It's just a matter of how many are kind of in contention.
Brandon Moss is still wearing his sunglasses.
Should have won it.
I think that year it was 5.
Was it when
It was
Charles
Ryan
Woodson,
Leaf, Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, and
Randy Moss? If
Randy
there's
Moss.
one other, then dude, you probably weren't going to win.
right.
That's a stout class.
I'm not gonna win, bro.
Yeah,
Charles Woodson
I just
won
wanted
it.
to meet these people.
Yeah, Charles Woodson did win it. Last defensive player to win it.
And Ndamukong Suh had the second. Was he
Yeah.
the second closest?
Dorsey's up there.
Dorsey is up there.
Tyron
Didn't get to
deserved
go.
be there.
Tyron went.
Yeah, Matthew was invited.
I'm telling you, if he returns that West Virginia, the one he batted in the air and catches that West Virginia, if that gets into the end zone, I think that just the numbers alone,
That just about seals it.
I think that seals it.
I mean, the great what if is always 2012, but I think if he comes back for 2012, I mean, people forget how much hype was on Tyrann Mathieu
Oh,
going
yeah,
into the
he
season.
was-
The week he got thrown off the team, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated and ESPN, the magazine. I mean, like, think about that.
Can't kick this guy off the team, right?
I mean, he's the most popular player in the sport. All he has to do is carry over what he did in 11 to
Well,
a degree. To a degree.
That's what I just say.
To a degree. I mean, like, I'm not saying he was good, but I mean,
it wasn't gonna be the same. But
do
it
we
was-
doubt that it was going to be that much different?
That's the greatest what if. That's what I think it almost did him a favor for his legacy and lure of the what if, because you have no idea what it would have looked like. It's like if Harold Perkins doesn't come back for his sophomore year. It's still that it's in that class of
Oh, yeah.
oh man, you never got to see what would have been.
Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Like he didn't come back for that junior year. He could have been. I don't. They didn't have
You just can't-
anybody
it's-
in college
yeah.
football
Yeah, no,
that
I
could have
know.
guarded him.
It's hard to top what he did as a sophomore, and
Yeah.
for him to not be able to come back, that's what makes it the greatest what if. Because I don't know if you can play at that level again, because everything just seemed to. And I could be wrong because, I mean, he's still doing it, but it just felt like such an enigma and such a holy. How does this happen? You can't just be in the right place at the right time all the time. And it turns out it's just that's how we played football. So there's no reason for me to doubt that he could have done that again, especially
No,
on that
that's-
defense.
Yeah, that's my kind of train of thought.
But I don't know if you would have. I guess you would have put him at punt returner again,
For
Or if you
sure.
would have started. Oh, I say that because of what they did, how they treated
Odell.
Patrick going into his junior year, where he kind of stopped returning punts and they put Tyrann back there because you start. And same thing with Pat's junior year, where you start protecting draft stock a little bit, but Tyrann just played totally different. Like you're not gonna. You can't cut that out of his DNA.
Tyron ain't fumbling that punt against Florida.
that Pat did?
Yeah.
And that was
Or Georgia?
That was Odell.
Yeah,
Odell
fell-
against-
it
Odell
was Georgia.
fumbled a couple of punts that
Pat,
year.
Yeah.
Pat he fumbled one in the swamp.
And then Odell was
Georgia.
Matt Elam forced
Oh,
that wasn't
yeah.
a punt. That was a
No,
like
but
he caught
he-
a deep ball.
He fumbled a punt too that game.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had
he
a
did.
tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the
game.
play of the game.
Yeah,
Oh, the strip. Yeah.
because he was going down the sidelines. He was looking to score.
Just get out.
I hate the swamp so much.
So this LSU Auburn series comes to a close tomorrow, and man, I got to be honest, it punches me in the gut. I mean, it hits. It definitely is one that you hate to see go because of just what it's meant to the history of the LSU program, what it's meant for the SEC, and really, what this game means and the meaning that it had year in, year out. I just think that this was as respectable and as double-sided of a rivalry that the SEC has had. I think that the SEC's popularity and in growth over the last 15 years, games like this are really ones that you can hang your hat on. Sure, the LSU-Alabama series is one that draws numbers. Georgia now is kind of the heavyweight of the class that's always going to bring eyeballs wherever they go. All of that, I think, was built on the backs of series like LSU and Auburn. There's series all throughout the conference that you could use examples from other schools. But from the LSU standpoint, I think the LSU-Auburn series has been one that the SEC has been very proud of over the last 30 years when you think about what this game has meant to the league and what this game has meant to each school and what the game has meant to the overall shakeout of college football. I mean, there was a decade run where this game was influencing the West every year. I mean, like high influence on the SEC West. And we all know what happens if you go to the SEC title game. I mean, think about that year that Cam Newton and Auburn won the national championship. As tough a game as they played all season long, the Mississippi State game was a tough one for them, but the LSU game at home, I mean, they had to earn that game. That was another one where, I mean, they had no quarterback play. LSU did. I think Spencer Ware threw a touchdown pass to Reuben Randall that day.
He did.
I want to say even like Keelan Williams, I mean, like threw a touchdown pass against Auburn at one point. I mean, like they brought so many non-quarterback teams over there and snuck out of there with close games and wins. I mean, it's wild to think about this one. But tomorrow, obviously, I think LSU's got a huge advantage when you're just looking at the roster. But Brian Kelly yesterday was talking about the approach to this Auburn game coming up tomorrow night. Stewie, this is 3. Brian Kelly 3, talking about this Auburn team and where they are. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, Peyton Thorne has thrown for over 6,000 yards in the Big Ten. So it's a bit misleading in terms of, their statistics relative to throwing the ball. They can throw the football. And if you're not on your coverage, they're capable of being very productive. They choose not to throw the football. So I think that's a big difference. I think there are some teams that are not capable of throwing the football and are not productive. They can throw the football, so they keep you balanced from that perspective. Now, let's face it, they're certainly a run-first team, but you have to defend the pass. You can't just say, they're not going to throw the football against LSU. They're going to do everything necessary to win the game. So we have to defend the pass. We have to obviously defend the quarterback and the quarterback run, which puts you in a very difficult situation defensively because it's hard to do both. And that's why this offense is a really good offense.
This is a slump buster for the LSU pass defense. I mean, for LSU's defensive pass group, if they can't at least take some confidence away from tomorrow night, it's worse than we thought it was. Think about that. I mean, this is 121 versus 121. The 121st ranked pass defense versus the 121st passing offense. Like, something's got to give here. Who's worse? Is the matchup. Like, I mean, like, who can't execute against one another is really going to be the takeaway here. I mean, for LSU defensively, if you can't at least find a little bit of sunshine tomorrow night versus this passing group, man,
You get a problem.
next 6 weeks are going to be a lot longer than we thought.
Right. And you had the only, I guess, not saving grace, but the only, I guess, silver lining for the LSU defense if it does perform poorly is you got Auburn off a bye with a mind like Hugh Freeze. So there's going to be some things dialed in there that will hit you for some chunk plays. Like you saw what they did against Georgia, where they found that the quarterback power, like quarterback sweep, essentially was their bread and butter, where they went for 50 and then they used it to convert it like a 4th and 2 against Georgia. And they kind of find ways to exploit your weaknesses on defense. We talked about that earlier in the week. But for LSU, it's going to turn. I don't even know if it's going to be the pass game. They're so reliant on the run, even with Peyton Thorne, and then you throw in a Robbie Ashford, whose ability to. I mean, you saw it last year. He's an elite athlete, and if you get him in space and they get that kind of thing going with the dual quarterback system where they're both running it on you, and Jack Wes Hunter gets going, like you can see them kind of eat up chunk plays, and then you can build a pass game off your run if you're that elite running the football. And LSU gave up some chunk plays last week against the run against Missouri, that's not their bread and butter, but they were able to do it a little bit against an LSU front that you just hope got better week to week. That's all you can hope for. And I think Brian Kelly mentioned some more words about Pete Jenkins.
Yeah. I mean,
he's making a difference already.
He's obviously coming in there and like just
nice
tinkering
to
a lot.
have somebody dedicated to the group.
Right.
And that's the thing that you kind of have to hang your hat on if you're LSU is you got big Pete Jenkins in there, and then you just hope you get better week to week because, I mean, let's not get it twisted. There's going to be points.
Yes.
Missouri.
Yes. Auburn will find
Auburn is going to find the end zone.
Hugh Freeze, man.
Yeah, and I just think that if you just have to make them one-dimensional. If you can keep Thorne in the pocket, keep Ashford in the pocket, that's when you'll see an LSU be able to pull away.
This will be a formidable defense from Auburn. This will be a tough group. Here is Brian Kelly. This is 6, Stewie, of him talking about that side of the ball that Auburn will be bringing to town tomorrow night.
Well, I think, there's a couple players. I think, the safety is playing at a high level. I think he's, leads the SEC or one of the top guys in the SEC in interceptions. Big and physical up front. I think it's a big defensive line that is well coached. I think the defensive structure is really sound, and they remind me of an Auburn defense that we played last year. It was physical. They're fast. They run to the football, and it's well coached. So I mean, when you go like from Missouri's defense to Arkansas to Mississippi State. Like, they're all really good defenses. Some might have a player here or there that might be better. But they're all really good defenses in some fashion. And this defense, I think, is probably as balanced, in the front seven and the back end as any defense that we've played.
It's going to be a great challenge, I think, for LSU, especially up front. Is really what I'm looking forward to the most. And Brian Kelly took a question on the offensive line that I thought was really good insight to that group over the last couple of weeks, because there was a time, I think, where we all expected, I know I did, expected Lance Hurd to unseat Miles Frazier, or at least move into a starting right tackle spot and bump Emory Jones down to a guard spot and ultimately take away Miles Frazier's starting job. And Frazier, over the last couple of weeks, I think obviously he felt a little bit of that heat, and his play has picked up for that. Emory Jones was named Offensive Lineman of the Week in the league last week, but when you go back and watch the game a couple of times, you see that Miles Frazier is playing. He's playing with a little bit of an edge right now. He's playing a little bit. Really, he's been playing a little meaner than he has been over the last year and first 2 games of this season. Frazier has really improved, and Brian Kelly was speaking of that yesterday because he was asked specifically on what the status of Hurd and that transition is as of now here at the midseason mark.
I think consistency of performance, and we felt like we've been playing at a high level, and to move somebody in to that position, especially the right tackle position, I think it requires you to knock the champion out in a sense, right? And Miles was a starter for us, and I don't think that this is a slight on Lance at all. I mean, I think he's played well when he's gone in there, but we just felt like that rotation needed to be such where we were getting outstanding play or even better play than Miles. And Miles has played really well, better than he played last year. So I think that consistency at right guard has really prompted us to be more consistent in keeping him in the game.
I agree. I think that is, I mean, when you hear him say that and you watch the last couple of games, that's been evident. I mean, that's been pretty clear that Frazier has at least gotten the message that if there is a shakeup, he's the one that's going to lose his job. That's how I have felt in watching him play over the last couple of weeks. I thought when you watch the unit play up until the 3rd, 4th game of the season, it was easy to see who for the lack of a better term, the weak link was. Right? I mean, it was kind of obvious who stood out. Now, when you watch them play, it's a consistent 5. I mean, I think that, this offensive line who, look, we were very high on in the offseason going into it, is really found their footing. They've found their confidence. They've found their edge. They've found their identity. I mean, it's a group that's obviously headlined by Campbell and Jones and even a senior in Turner. But when you add in Dellinger, I think Dellinger's been really solid. I mean, he's a guy that we just don't talk about.
Which is the
Exactly.
biggest compliment you could pay.
That's right. I mean, he's been just
Solid.
yeah. I mean, and I think when you go down the line, that would probably be the grade for all of them.
Solid.
You know, I think Turner struggled a little bit last week. He obviously had the injury. But, I mean, there has been times where Turner's been a little inconsistent.
But hell, Coach, you're 3 deep at center.
I know.
That was the biggest coup of anything that you found out. Like, oh, DJ Chester, get in there.
The quickest trigger they have is on him.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
But you want to see him play. I think for everything that Brian Kelly just said about like knocking out the heavyweight, I think more of what he's interested in is the continuity of those 5 playing together, because people forget that the offensive line is almost like it's a symphony where they have to be all playing the same notes at the same time and know what each other's doing. They all know each other's position. They've talked about that before, where to play on the offensive line, you have to know what the guard does, what the center does. You have to know how to do those jobs. And having the same 5 play consistently is probably the best thing you can have in football. And that's what I think is more, Brian Kelly's more interested, whether it's talent or not, having Miles Frazier out there with the same 4 that he's been lining up with all year. I think has been the biggest difference for they're comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
And they stop tinkering with it a little bit.
Speaking of sticking with one, Logan Diggs has emerged as the top running back on this team. This is 8, Stewie, of Brian Kelly talking about Diggs and his performance up to this point and what he gives LSU at that position.
Him going forward.
I mean, we're going to have them all ready and available, and it's kind of been the same theme. You know, we're going to go with the guy that is running well. And Logan Diggs has been really good, and we've kind of stuck with him. If it's somebody else, we'll go with them. They'll all be ready. They'll all be prepared, and we'll see how things play out, Saturday night.
Thanks for tuning in to our premium LSU content right here on YouTube. If you want more of it, subscribe below.